here we are at Comic Spot today, you guys. Yes, sirree, bub. I'm a veteran, and I get the pleasure of vetting veterans of comedy. Today we have somebody here who is a veteran of so much, of overcoming over 100 surgeries, staying positive, not giving up. Let me read you the intro he sent me, because God forbid I should take anybody's words and act like they're my own. That would make me worse than Buddy Hackett. It's a little play on words about hack, in case you didn't.
Okay, got you.
He says, I started comedy in 2000, was stand up till 2014, when medical problems forbade him from traveling. He has traveled to colleges, clubs, casinos, etc., in 4 bordering states before then, producing since 2002 till the present. He's performed at Borgata, Turning Stone casinos, 2 huge ones, owns and runs Gateway Comedy Club, which we will get into. That's super huge and dope and woke, in case you don't know.
Whoa.
Since 2002, the Gateway Comedy Club. Yeah. And since 2002, mostly at hotels on Long Island, who is also an actor at Boardwalk Empire and featured on Caught Red-Handed on TV. We got to figure out what he did get caught red-handed. I don't think he was the perpetrator.
I was.
Some commercials like PC Richards Tri-State. He can be contacted. We'll make you wait for that. You're going to read that on the post afterward. So that's going to be the big cliffhanger. So let's get to the stage right now. The man who just got out of surgery, Mike Dillon. Hey, Mike, welcome to Comic Spot.
Hi, how are you? So nice to finally see you in person.
Thank you. I'm taking off my cat lady glasses.
Okay, you look very nice today, by the way.
Thank you so much. You look
I'm just
very
sitting
handsome.
here with my dog today, so.
It's my goal to try to make you turn red. How am I doing?
That's one of my issues. Sometimes, even when they cut me, I don't turn red. So that's been one of my many issues I've had medically.
Yes. Well, you just got out of surgery, which can't be fun in New York during a COVID crisis. What the heck? Let's start there before we go back to your childhood. I want to know how scary it must be to have surgery during an outbreak of COVID in New York, Mike.
Well, the doctors that I use, I trust them. So I trust that they're in there too. So if they're getting something, or they may get it from me. So, but we did that on Friday, July 3rd. And hopefully they got it all. This is like, I joked around with you, not that it's really a joking matter, but I can now cross cancer off my bucket list, and hopefully they got it all.
You talk about a C
that's
word.
What haven't had, so just melanoma. It's not the worst. So I've had it in my family. My mother back in the 60s had a mastectomy, and my poor niece Nina had a really bad bout, and she's clean now. So, and unfortunately, we've had my brother's wife died about 4 years ago of cancer. So, I mean, that doesn't run. Doesn't run in the family. I am the least of all, but I'm okay.
I want to know. So many people around the country are inspired by you overcoming so many surgeries. We see your pictures. We see your positivity. Where does it come from? Be honest. It's not because you're Democrat or Republican.
It is because, no. Are we going to get into politics? You said I'm woke. I don't know about that. I'm barely awake, and you're going to say I'm woke. My father was a World War II Marine, and my mother, God bless her, I remember the days, even when, in my late teens, I remember her literally walking miles to work because we had one car at a time, and she was the both of them. They're both. I would not be able to live without trying to honor both their lives. Of course, they're both gone now. My father was left at 53 many years ago, but they and my father died representing the company that he was working for. He was a union steward, and he found out that the company was absconding with the money for their retirements, and they literally harassed him to death. And I sued the company, and I got my mother quite a, decent enough to that she could stay in her house the rest of her life without worrying. So I would. That's what that keeps me going. I cannot make them ashamed, even though they're past. I cannot make them ashamed of their lives and having children.
Yes, that's a best story anybody could ever hear in a time like this or any time. I love that story. Okay, let's go back to your childhood with your parents. Tell me, which one of your parents did you get your comedy chops from? Or when did you have your comedy coming of age?
Oddly enough, probably the funniest man I've ever met was my uncle, who I only we and oddly enough, before I even became a comic, he did a little stand up one night when we were in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. He had a party, I think might have been his birthday, and the funniest man I ever met, that people would say that they were almost afraid or hesitant to invite him to wakes because he'd make everybody laugh. He'd make everybody would. He was so funny. Even with at death, he'd have people in hysterics. He was just such a comic. He was just inborn. He was just he really should have been a comic. And you alluded to Buddy Hackett before, and that would have been that era, and he would have. He was a Navy man. He was Navy and Army man, a military man for after the Navy in World War II, whereupon he was, I believe, he was blown off of 6 different ships,
What?
meaning the ships were bombed and they had to get off. And to the day he died,
Mhm.
he said the most exciting time in his life was World War II. Which
Was
now, how
what?
do you
Was what?
the most exciting times in his life were during World War II.
Wow.
Is that amazing wartime? Because when you think about it, you are on edge and your nerves are so heightened during battle.
Mhm.
How could you not? How could you compare that to anything?
Yes. So you started using some of your family's comedy chops yourself at some point, and somebody had to encourage you that you were funny. Who was that? Or who were the people in your life that said, "You're kind of funny," or you're going to the principal, "You're too funny."
Well, I'll tell you what prompted me into doing comedy
Mhm.
was that I was anything but that. It get me in on a stage, talked in front of people. It was such a fear to me
Mhm.
to talk in a public speaking, that I had to eventually address it. I had to do it. I hate being fearful of anything, and I had that fear for well over 20 years, maybe 25 years. Very interesting story how I finally did get up on stage, but the fear was so great. Like when I was in high school and I'd have to give a speech or a presentation or something, I would sweat profusely. I mean, profusely. And So I finally had to attack it. I finally, after waiting, I went to the very first club on Long Island in the mid '70s by Richie Minervini. No, Richard M. Dixon's White House Inn. That actually dates it in the mid '70s, and they were letting people go up, become comics. And I sat there. I was going to go up, and they heckled the poor guy that I had witnessed so badly that I couldn't do it. And 25 years later, I finally got on stage for the first time. And that night, guys like Eddie Murphy were there, Bob Nelson. I actually met the guy who they heckled that night through speaking with different people. And Vinny Basso was his name. And Vinny had, I think, MS or something. So he was kind of sporadic in his nature. And the audience didn't care. I mean, they just ripped him apart. And of course, I'm a guy in my early 20s. I'm not going to let people laugh at me. You know what I mean?
Are you
I have
kidding
the
me?
big ego.
Yeah.
And 25 years later, I finally got up. I finally got the guts to get up. And then I was a professional for 14 years. I actually got paid. I used to
So
get
the
paid.
first time you went up after 25 years, what was it like before you went up and when you were up?
Well, I walked in and somebody, I think it was Peter Bales, in fact, that night, a great MC, very well known.
Mhm.
I was walking around. You a comic? I didn't even know comic. What's a comic? I had heard of a comedian, but I didn't know what a comic was. So I said, "Yeah, I'm a comic." So I got up and I did 5 minutes. I got one laugh. The first joke, I went through my setup to the joke, and then I forgot the punchline. I actually asked the audience, "Does anybody know the punchline to this joke?" I did 5 minutes. I got one laugh. I was hooked. I went back up. The next time, I think was even more interesting. I went to a karaoke place and I talked the owner into letting me up. So we don't have comics here. We have singers. I talked them going up, and after my set, of course, they're expecting music. The MC got up and said, "Did you hear the audience?" He said, "Now you know why I drink so much." Funny, right? Funny line. So I sat down. I wasn't going to walk out of there with my tail between my legs. I finished my drink.
Mhm.
A girl came up to me. She said, "I thought you were very funny." And I said, "It would have been nice if you had walked around the room and laughed a little loud." And that was it. I was hooked.
Oh,
I was hooked.
So tell me about doing comedy and your step to getting Gateway Comedy going. I'm so proud. Every time I see your flyers, I'm reminded of you overcoming and you putting on these great shows all over Long Island, right? They're all over Long Island mostly.
Yeah, well, we used to do tri-state in Pennsylvania until um, I lost my leg, so it's kind of hard to walk to Pennsylvania when you only have one leg. But
Yeah.
that's a bad joke. But
That's funny.
I had to kind of cut it down. I've had like a lot of maladies. I used to perform at a place, and they went out of business. They was a problem. But the place I used to go in once in a blue moon, not often, and have a drink. And they approached me one night, said, "Hey, you used to work down here. You used to perform down here all the time. Why don't you start it up?" I said, "Well, all right, why not? Why? I'm up for challenges. I like challenges." And I started, and I was there for quite a while. And then another hotel found out about my success where I am now, believe it or not, I'm still there over 15 years. And they approached me. And so then I had two hotels going at the same time. And the first hotel went under, and then people would hear about me and they would approach me. I wouldn't really even have to go after them. They would hear something when they come see a show and they'd want. And the people, oddly enough, or ironically, it's probably a better word, the people that brought me into the place that I'm at now for over 15 years, they're all gone. Everybody who brought me in is gone. They've moved on. And I am the second longest tenured person in the hotel. I'm there even longer than the owners. There's a bartender, barmaid that has been there longer than me. But everybody in the entire hotel, I've outdistanced. So, and along with that, four other club owners on Long Island since I started, which, a certain amount of pride, I suppose. I try not to get too prideful. I think
You don't seem like the type.
I think you got to keep your head. Don't count too many. I decided to count the illnesses because I did think it was really odd that I was getting that many operations. So I said I should really document this, at least in my own head.
You're like
Course.
you're your own superpower, overcoming all your operations.
Yeah, people call me the Iron Man, stuff like that. I don't perform anymore. I decided that was enough of that. But plus, I can't travel. So what's the sense of being for? What happens, Linda, is what after you get paid to do this, and I never got higher than a middle act, by the way. It wasn't a headliner, but once you get paid to do it, it's hard to then just become a hobby comic, just to work locally. It's, you know what I mean? There's like I don't know. To me, it was anyway. To me, I just couldn't do that when I was used to bigger things or the thing is when somebody else pays you, they think you're valuable enough to get paid. It's not the same than when you pay yourself because I basically just do my own shows now.
Tell me about Gateway Comedy Shows. Plug it. I want to know what's the premise behind it? What's your focus? What do you do differently than other people you're competing with for shows? Why would I come to your comedy show? What am I going to get for my money?
Well, my original template was the godfather of Long Island comedy, Richie Minervini. I had heard about him, even though I never had gone to a comedy show. Basically before I started doing it. I mean, I had seen big shows like George Carlin, but not a regular comedy club. I always figured I could make myself laugh. Why do I need to have somebody else make me laugh? And I was always like I developed before I became a comic. I was started becoming the life of the party, and so things like that. So it was a pretty that way it was easy, to translate to the next thing. But Minervini, and I've heard stories from people. He was the second club on Long Island, East Coast. Was it East Coast Comedy Club? East Side Comedy Club in Farmingdale and Huntington. And I heard stories about other people who had gone there. No, weren't even comics, and that he would always find the thing about Richie. They said he would always find a show for everybody. It didn't matter if you were Jackie Mason, who opened his club, or if it was Mike Dillon, who maybe had never been on stage ever. He would find a show for you.
Wow.
And I said, wow, that is really, really cool. And so I kind of became Richie Minervini light because there's no way I can hold a candle to that man. But in fact, he's performing tonight in Myrtle Beach. If you're in Myrtle Beach, see Richie. Tell him I said so. Tell him I said so. But, I wanted to do that. And that's what I basically did. I would give old veterans that maybe for one reason or another hadn't worked out with a club. I mean, really good known comics who had been on HBO and TV and everything. Maybe they had fallen by the wayside, or maybe they had a little riff with another club. And so I was the option. And I gave a lot I could mention the names. I can give you a list. You wouldn't believe the people who performed for me.
I bet.
And guys on the way up who have done pretty well. So the template was Richie Minervini. Nothing to do with me. I just copied or tried to copy him.
All right. And that we're almost at 30 minutes of me being on here. Not that you've talked that long. We had the time before we went live. So I've got to cut it short. But I want you to tell me what's going on with Gateway Comedy when the world reopens. Do you have a lot of plans for Gateway Comedy?
Yeah, you know, I'm waiting. Like I said, I just had this procedure, so I'm a little bit under it. I got to kind of wait till I heal a little bit, and then, and plus, you know, I don't exactly want to dive into a bad situation and then find out 2 weeks later 100 people got sick because they came to one of my shows. So I'm being a little cautious. I think it's the smart thing to do, and so we're waiting a little bit. I have the feelers out. People know I'm around. I have made a couple of phone calls, and I work with some other clubs. So we're not done. This is my 18th year now with Gateway. 20 years in the comedy business, and I don't think it's done. I don't think it's done. They haven't cut all of me out of me yet.
They haven't cut your heart, your huge heart, and your strength. They'll never get that out of you, will they?
Well, that's my parents' legacy that they left to me, and hopefully I just pass on to my son. I have one son who's a cop, and wanted to be a cop his whole life. And guess what? He's doing public service too. So
absolutely. Here's to our first line people that are protecting us. So
absolutely,
not all
and
of
they
them
don't
are
get
bad.
the credit. They're getting a lot of heat now for ridiculous reasons.
Get the bad ones out.
There's bad in everything, as we all know.
Mhm.
And, you know, there's some bad actors, they like to say nowadays. So guess what? There's really no way of preventing that. But you have to take everything, you know, and whole, and then, like you say, try to eliminate the bad ones, because there are bad ones.
There are, and let's get rid of them. But I got a question for you before I sign out. Do you want any more traffic anywhere on the internet? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok.
I could use a TikTok. My breath is a little no.
I thought the TikTok that I thought
oh, that's a TikTok. I don't know what it is.
I thought TikTok was about Flava Flav.
Yeah, right, Flava Flav, right.
Do you want any traffic?
That's nice of you to ask about it. It's gatewaycomedy@gmail.com. And you can get me on Mike Dillon on Facebook too if you want. There's one with the sign on the background. That's my big, my big production is just a little sign in the back of my head. I'm not good with the tech. I'm not good.
Oh, you've made a brand for yourself. You don't need to be any more techie tech than you are. Because whenever your Gateway Comedy flyer shows up on Facebook, I stop scrolling. It's a good feeling you get. I know you're doing good work, and I'm so glad I got to know you, to know what's your inspiration behind your legacy. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Aren't you sad you asked me on? I'm sorry you asked me on now. I kind of took 9.5 minutes away from your interview.
That's okay. I'll just I'll cut 9 other people short 1 minute. They'll never know.
Okay.
I'll give them the light. When people get the light, they just get the heck off the stage. You can do it.
That's right. I'm used to that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike.
It was my pleasure. It really was. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you. Thank you for your service to this country.
Thank you. Yeah, you're the reason I'm the reason you're speaking English, Mike.
Still the best country on this planet. And I thank you.
Thank you. Love you lots. Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Everybody's talking.